Even in a utopia, someone needs to clean up the mess. And that's where I come in.
I love watching, like, there are people now film themselves playing games, and watching people finish the game just sort of literally sit there like this for like 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then and what I think there are two things that I'm proudest of on Infinite. One is that the realization of Elizabeth as a character, you know, how that we really she was the heart of it, and that she worked as well as she did. But second, that the ending of the game and the game itself started a conversation, didn't finish a conversation, and that we left enough for the player to interpret that it became their game as well. You know, some of my favorite endings of films are, you know, the end of The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson, or you ever see like Lost in Translation?
Absolutely.
Where she whispers something to him, or he whispers to her, and you don't know what it is. And what is it? It's whatever you think it is. And that's why I've not been out there doing interviews explaining the ending, you know. I would give factual information, like if somebody says, oh, why is this? And if it's explained in a log, I will tell them. But generally, I see interpretations, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know where they got that from, but that sounds cool. But it's just as valid as whatever I said. And I think the fact that a game, you know, forget about any particular artistic merits of Infinite on its own, but the fact that it fostered a conversation amongst gamers and a debate, you know, pages and pages of analysis. I like that a lot, and I'm very, very proud of that. Somewhere beyond the sea. It was something that I knew if we were going to do it, it had to be done in a way that was the right thing. Like, you know, a lot of people ask, you know, well, when are you going to go back to Rapture? Why do you tell the story of the fall of Rapture? And to me, people knew the story of the fall of Rapture. It was in audio logs, but just to show it wouldn't be interesting to me. In the same way, you know, that you have that metachlorian problem from, remember the Star Wars movies where they explain where the Force came from. You're like, I don't need to know that. You know, I know enough. I know that it's, you know, it's this mystical force, and I get it. And there's a dark side and a light side. So with Rapture, it was like, the first image I had was not Rapture, it was Elizabeth, you know, in this sort of femme fatale outfit, standing in Booker's, you know, Art Deco office, you know, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why is she there? Why is he there? And immediately I started asking myself the questions, and then it was to set a story against the backdrop of Rapture right before the fall, right literally on the eve of the fall, to really explore that world. We'll have Booker and Elizabeth explore that world and get a taste of that world. Was just very exciting to us, but it was about if we couldn't have chosen a more sort of challenging or expensive way to approach the DLC, because all the assets, the environmental assets, and most of the objects and characters had to be created from scratch. You know, we couldn't pull them from BioShock 1 because they were a different engine. We couldn't pull them from Infinite because it's Columbia, you know. But that was fun, but it was also, you know, why do it? Daddy, won't you come home? I don't want to say too much because I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, but, you know, Elizabeth as a character, if you look at her, when you meet her, she's effectively a child, you know, when you meet her and her experience. And throughout the course of BioShock Infinite, she changes substantially. You know, you go from this child to this woman who's been tortured, and, you know, you're pulling these horrible things out of her back, and then she becomes this sort of all-powerful creature who drowns Songbird and Booker eventually, you know. And the woman you meet a woman at the beginning of Burial at Sea. You don't meet a child. And I'm not saying she aged physically much. I'm saying that this is a person who's been through a lot, and I think people are going to be surprised about the relationship and how different it is between Infinite and Burial at Sea.
Miss
Elizabeth.
So I want to be very clear. It's not like we recreated every system or most systems from BioShock 1. We used primarily the systems from Infinite, and there are reasons, like for instance, they're called Plasmids, but they're drinkable and they're mostly the same powers as you saw in Infinite. And we explain why that is in the story. That was beyond the scope of a DLC to basically recreate Rapture in the new engine, and all this game system Rapture. That said, I think fans will be very disappointed if there are no big daddies in this thing, and we don't intend to disappoint them. The combat in the two experiences feels, the Clash in the Clouds is very much BioShock Infinite combat. The first DLC, the first of the Barrel at Sea DLCs you'll be Booker and you'll be tough, but it's much more like BioShock 1 combat in the sense that you can observe and hear enemies before you encounter them in a way you really couldn't in Infinite. We worked really hard to sort of get that feeling back, and so you can plan and lay traps, because all your vigor / plasmids have a trap, or almost all of them have a trap one. That becomes really meaningful now because you can observe the enemy and set it up. And when you play Elizabeth, you're very physically fragile, and it becomes almost like, and we're very early on the Elizabeth stuff, so I don't want to say too much, but the balance seems more towards a survival horror type of experience, and really about her planning ahead and stealthing around more. I don't want to. We're very early, but that's the plan. That each one of these DLC combats can feel. Yeah, I mean I think certainly in the first of the Barrel at Sea DLCs, it's all parts of Rapture you haven't seen before, everywhere. I think you see the Kashmir restaurant out a window or something, but it's mostly new. It's all new environments, and half of that first Barrel at Sea takes place in Rapture, full of life, full of people. And the first quest has no combat in it, and it's all Elizabeth and Booker sort of scheming to get what they need done. A little grifting action, actually, and you really get to feel for Rapture as a functioning city, and you may even encounter some characters you may know and or love and or terrified of from the first game a year earlier. And the second half of Barrel at Sea Part 1 takes place in Fontaine, an old department store that was shut down, Fontaine department store, after he got supposedly killed. Ryan took all of his Fontaine's cronies and put them in this department store and sunk it, basically the ocean floor, and it's a prison for them now. And so Booker and Elizabeth need to go there for various reasons in the story. And that's full of splicers and everybody gone crazy and killing each other, and it's totally bananas down there. So you have sort of half in like pristine Rapture and half in a very traditional crazy Rapture. We have some a number of the splicers have plasmid powers, which was something people want to see more of from Infinite. There's I don't think we've listed the enemies specifically. There's a bunch of enemies, different enemy types in the game, from ones you use plasmids to one who use weapons to some big giant hulking old friends.